Imagine standing in a dark, echoing cave, torchlight flickering against the walls. You see ancient bones scattered on the ground, but something's wrong. These bones aren't from animals, they're human, and they've been cracked open, the marrow sucked out thousands of years ago. What could drive our prehistoric ancestors to such a chilling act? Hunger, ritual, or something darker? The story begins deep inside a cave in northern Spain, known today as Grandolina. It's here, in the mid-1990s, that archaeologists made a discovery that would shake our understanding of human prehistory. At first, it seemed like a routine excavation, layer after layer of sediment, each revealing fragments of life from hundreds of thousands of years ago. But then, the team began finding human bones, and they weren't intact. Many of these bones were from children, teenagers, and young adults. But they had unusual marks. Scratches, cut lines, and percussion fractures, the kind you see when a bone is struck to extract marrow. The scientists compared these markings to those on animal bones found nearby. The patterns were almost identical. It was as if the humans had been butchered in the same way as deer or bison. This was no accident. The evidence was too precise, too consistent. These remains, dating back about 800,000 years, belonged to Homo antecessor, one of our earliest human relatives. And the brutal truth was dawning: these prehistoric people had eaten their own kind. But how could scientists be certain that these marks told the story of cannibalism and not something else? After all, bones can be damaged in many ways over thousands of years. To solve this, researchers used forensic techniques similar to those in modern crime labs. Under microscopes, they examined the edges of the cuts. The patterns revealed that sharp stone tools had sliced through flesh with deliberate precision. There were also spiral fractures, a telltale sign of bones being broken while still fresh to get at the nutrient-rich marrow inside. The placement of these cuts was key. They weren't random. The marks appeared at the muscle attachment points, exactly where a butcher would cut to remove meat from an animal. And crucially, the cuts came before the bones fossilized, proving the damage was prehistoric. What's more, the animal bones found in the same layers bore the same butchery patterns. In other words, whoever left these marks used the same butchering method on humans as they did on their prey. The conclusion was unsettling but clear. This was not a burial, not a ritual disposal. It was processing for food. When the findings were first published, the reaction was explosive. Headlines screamed about man-eating cavemen, and the idea that one of our earliest known relatives could engage in cannibalism felt deeply unsettling. For many, it shattered the romantic image of prehistoric humans as noble hunters living in harmony with nature. Some researchers pushed back, arguing that perhaps the cannibalism was rare, an act of desperation during times of extreme hunger. Others wondered if it might have been ritualistic, part of a social or spiritual practice that we could never fully understand. But whatever the motive, the evidence was undeniable. Around 800,000 years ago, in the heart of Europe, humans had eaten other humans. Grandolina was not an isolated case. Similar evidence began turning up elsewhere, from caves in France to sites in Africa. The more archaeologists looked, the more they realized this grim behavior might have been far more common in our past than anyone had imagined. The question now wasn't if prehistoric humans engaged in cannibalism, but why? What could drive a community to consume its own? To answer that, we have to step into the harsh and dangerous world they lived in. To understand why prehistoric humans might have turned to cannibalism, we need to picture the world they inhabited. It was a place of constant uncertainty, ice advancing and retreating, seasons that could shift from abundance to famine in weeks, predators lurking at every turn. Food wasn't just scarce, sometimes it was a matter of life or death. Imagine a small group of Homo antecessor huddled in a cave during a bitter Ice Age winter. The game they depended on had migrated. The rivers were frozen. Every day without food meant less strength to hunt, less warmth to survive. In such desperate conditions, the boundary between prey and person could blur. Survival cannibalism has been recorded in many later human societies, often during shipwrecks, sieges, or famines. For early humans, the stakes were even higher. There were no food stores, no safety nets. Consuming the flesh of a deceased group member might have been seen as a grim necessity rather than an act of cruelty. But survival wasn't the only explanation. In some cases, the evidence suggests something more deliberate, something planned. And that possibility opens the door to a much darker interpretation. Beyond sheer hunger, some archaeologists believe prehistoric cannibalism may have been ritualistic, a cultural or spiritual act rather than a desperate last resort. In many traditional societies, consuming parts of the dead was thought to transfer their strength, courage, or wisdom to the living. Could our ancient relatives have shared a similar belief? In certain cave sites, bones show signs of deliberate preparation, but without the chaotic marks of starvation-driven butchery. This suggests the process may have been slow, even ceremonial. Perhaps the act was tied to honoring the dead, keeping their essence within the group. Some researchers point to patterns in the bones' placement, hinting at symbolic arrangements rather than random disposal. It's also possible that these rituals were linked to identity and belonging. In a dangerous world, small groups relied on tight social bonds. Ritual cannibalism could have served as a powerful, if disturbing, way to reinforce unity, ensuring that the dead quite literally became part of the living community. But there's another, even more unsettling theory, that cannibalism wasn't always about survival or ceremony. Sometimes it might have been about power, revenge, or sheer dominance. Some of the most chilling evidence points toward cannibalism as a tool of intimidation or revenge. In a world where territory and resources meant survival, rival groups were constant threats. Killing an enemy wasn't always enough. Consuming them could send a terrifying message. We are stronger, and you are nothing but food to us. Archaeological sites in both prehistoric Europe and Africa have revealed bones showing signs of violent death, followed by butchery. In these cases, the cannibalism appears targeted, not random. Often the victims were outsiders, possibly captured during raids or conflicts. Eating the enemy may have been a way to humiliate them even in death, erasing their identity and asserting total dominance. Some researchers have also speculated that cannibalism could have been a means of controlling population size in times of scarcity, though this remains controversial. What's clear is that the act wasn't always born from desperation. Sometimes it was strategic, symbolic, and deeply woven into social dynamics. Whether for survival, ceremony, or power, cannibalism was part of the prehistoric human toolkit. But what does this reveal about us as a species? And how does it fit into the broader human story? That's the question we explore next. The idea that our ancestors, people who looked, thought, and felt much like us, could engage in cannibalism forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. We often picture early humans as simple hunters, united against the challenges of nature. But the evidence tells a more complex story, one where survival, culture, and violence intertwined in unexpected ways. Cannibalism shows that early humans were not just passive victims of their environment. They were adaptable, resourceful, and capable of making decisions that crossed moral boundaries when necessary. It also reveals how fluid those boundaries were in the ancient world. What we now see as unthinkable could, in the right conditions, be seen as practical, honorable, or even sacred. Understanding this behavior also helps us grasp a broader point. Humanity's history is not a straight line of moral progress. The same species that painted cave walls and crafted delicate tools also cracked human bones for marrow. This duality, the capacity for creation and destruction, has always been with us. But the story doesn't end in prehistory. Similar patterns emerge again and again throughout recorded history, hinting at something deep and enduring in the human condition. When we step forward in time, we find that cannibalism didn't vanish with the Ice Age. From the besieged city of Leningrad in World War II to the infamous Donner Party trapped in the Sierra Nevada, desperate humans have turned to the same grim solution our prehistoric ancestors once used. Even outside of survival situations, ritual and warfare cannibalism have appeared in societies around the globe, from the Maori in New Zealand to certain tribes in the Amazon. These later cases echo the same themes we've seen in prehistory, the fine line between necessity and tradition, between dominance and devotion. The fact that such acts appear in different cultures, separated by vast distances and millennia, suggests that cannibalism isn't an anomaly in human history. It's a recurring possibility under extreme conditions. And here lies the unsettling truth. Cannibalism may not define humanity, but it is undeniably part of it. The capacity for it exists in the same species that builds civilizations, writes poetry, and sends rockets into space. This paradox of greatness and brutality existing side by side is one of the defining features of what it means to be human. The bones at Grandolina and at countless other sites are more than archaeological evidence. They're mirrors, reflecting both the resilience and the darkness in human nature. They remind us that survival is rarely a clean or noble process. In the rawest moments of existence, choices are made not in the light of morality, but in the shadow of necessity. Yet they also highlight something remarkable: adaptability. The same minds that devised ways to trap animals or craft stone tools could also make the cold calculation to consume human flesh if it meant the group might endure another winter. In a brutal world, adaptability was survival, even if it came with an unthinkable cost. Today we recoil from the thought, but our ancestors' reality was not shaped by comfort or abundance. Their world demanded that every resource be used, every option considered. That truth, however uncomfortable, is part of our shared inheritance. Cannibalism in prehistory isn't just about the act itself. It's a window into the extremes of human experience. It challenges us to ask, if pushed to the very edge, what choices would we make? From the dark caves of Grandolina to the windswept plains of the Ice Age, the story of prehistoric cannibalism forces us to confront a side of humanity we'd rather ignore. It's not just a tale of brutality. It's a story of survival, adaptation, and the shifting boundaries of morality. Our ancestors weren't monsters. They were humans navigating a world where the choices were often grim and the stakes were life or death. Understanding this doesn't excuse the act, but it does place it in context. It shows us that history isn't just about triumphs and discoveries. It's also about the uncomfortable truths that shaped who we are today. If this journey into our ancient past made you rethink what it means to be human, imagine how many more hidden stories are buried in history's shadows. What other truths are waiting to be unearthed? If you'd like to explore more fascinating and sometimes unsettling moments from humanity's past, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell me in the comments, faced with the same harsh reality as our ancestors, what choice do you think you'd make?